Hey everyone, welcome to Humpday Happy Hour, hosted by Dentists in the Know. This is the webcast where dentistry meets real talk, real news, and just the right amount of sarcasm. We are pulling back the curtain on the industry. We're talking to the experts, the innovators, and the everyday clinicians, the people that are out there doing the work. There's no fluff, there's no filter, and there's definitely no sales pitches disguised as education. If it's happening in dentistry, from clinical insights to regulatory curveballs or the latest scandal at the AIDA, we are probably already talking about it, and we are bringing the goods. So whether you're a seasoned doc, part of a dental team or industry, a curious consumer, or maybe you're just here for the banter, we welcome you all to the show, because around here, we're not just in the loop, we are in the know. Hi there, everyone. I'm Dr. Jeff Horowitz. I'm with two amazing clinicians and two of my best friends. I'm talking about Dr. Chad Duplantis and Dr. Jennifer Bell. We created this little platform called Dentists in the Know to make the dental world just a little bit smaller, but a whole lot more fun. Today, we're going to be talking about dental overhead. I'm excited to talk about this because this is a battle that any one of us and every one of us have fought throughout our career. So looking forward to this chat. My friends, how you doing today?
Doing great. How about you, Jeff?
I'm doing okay. Got a little gig tomorrow in your neck of the woods, which I'm pretty excited about. I get to see Chatty doing a study club tomorrow, which I'm kind of excited about.
Tell us some more about what are you talking about and who are you talking to?
Just talking about the implications of not being aware of airway in overall treatment planning and the downfalls of not considering airway in comprehensive treatment planning.
I love that.
It's going to be a larger group for a study club anyway. We're going to be, we'll have oral surgeons, orthodontists. We're going to have a lot of good perspective on different therapies, and should just be a good conversation. You know, I'm looking forward to it because a lot of these people were in the previous Seattle study club in that area. So I know it's going to be a high caliber people, and then even Chad's going to join.
That's my old Seattle study club, that group.
Yeah.
Would they ban?
COVID.
Longer story than that, probably for another night.
Yeah.
Well, that's the short story that I got, but I know that didn't help anything. So, but I'm excited. I love getting out. I kind of like some of the smaller group lectures just because it really, you know, it allows for better conversation and you know, a lot of thought provoking, you know, dissent for no other term. And I love that because that's the way we advance the science, is by just hearing everybody's perspective and offering our own opinions and kind of, you know, forging our own treatment protocols based on that. So I'm excited.
You know,
if I get there.
I'm excited to see you, and I'm excited to see some of my friends and colleagues, and have you meet some of my friends and colleagues. And I'm just going to go ahead and throw out there that the study club that you're speaking for is run by probably one of the nicest, if not the nicest, people in dentistry. He's a classmate of mine, and I don't think out of the 90 in my class and the 350 in school that not one person could say one bad thing about John Schillingberg. He's just such a great guy.
I believe that. I've had several conversations with him, and most of the time we could have kept talking for another hour after we hung up. And I couldn't agree with you more. Just a super guy, and really wants to just share information out there, and kudos for what he's doing for that club.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So JB, what's happening in your world?
Nothing much. Just nothing exciting. Regular life.
Overall, you know, I could be wrong, but I'm sensing just the teeniest hint of blah from all three of us.
Yeah,
You
just
know,
a teeny hint.
I'm not feeling the usual kind of high energy that the three of us bring, and I'm not sure what it
Is
is.
it because it got cold?
It could be. It
I mean,
could
it got cold.
Yeah. It could also
Hey,
be
so this is
cracked 2 rims in 3 days.
Yeah.
this is a interesting question for you all. We're all located geographically in different sections of the United States. However, you guys are on the same basically longitude. So I have a question, and this may be a stupid question, but are you all experiencing the northern lights in your neck of the woods?
Yes, but not as bold. But
So
yes.
So as soon as we're done tonight, we are going to go jump in the car and go just around the corner to the top of the hill where we can see for miles and try and see if we can catch the northern lights tonight.
Yeah, I think
So
it's flat where you are too, and that helps. I lose the horizon a ton where we are, so it's a little bit harder to see them here. But yeah,
I'm just going to get on the roof.
there you go.
Yeah, there you go. So sorry, I thought I'd ask. I didn't know if it was. I know it's really concentric here. I just didn't know how it was over there.
I don't think it's as bright as it is where you are, but we did get it last night. But I didn't
see any of it, JB?
I was asleep.
Oh,
I heard that it happened.
Yeah, well, they talked
great
about
pictures
on today, and they said they'll let us know.
Do what?
What?
No, they mentioned on the news that we could get a view of it, but it's not. You know, it's not a guarantee. So
Yeah.
I think on the 11 o'clock news, they're going to let us know if they
if it happened, and you're like, great, cool.
Yeah. But I'll be long asleep because I have a 6 a.m. flight tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Hey, here's another random story that I just thought I'd share because we do sometimes talk about this. And I know we shouldn't be talking about random things, but Jeff, I've been meaning to tell you this, and I just have to tell you this right here. I watched a Forensic Files 2 weeks ago, and it was a husband and a wife that died in Conway, South Carolina in the late 90s.
Husband and wife, or was it a husband that was going to or a husband that had a murder for hire plot against his wife?
No, it was two significant others that both died, I believe. It's not the one that you and I talked about last time I saw you. It was a different.
Okay, yeah, because we had a banker, actually the president of a local bank. Not a local bank, it's a large national bank, but local here in Conway. And they had moved down to Charleston. We were actually in a supper club. They lived literally 2.5 houses down. And they moved down to Charleston, and apparently he found a lover and put a murder for hire plot together, and it's been on Dateline and 2020 and all that. But yeah.
Do you remember the last name? I mean, it's not hip. We don't have to worry about him now, but what was the last name?
Latham.
No, I don't think that was it. What was the first name?
Well, Nancy was the woman.
No. See, here we go. We can go talk on tangents all that long.
Sorry, good old divorce. Why you got to go kill people?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. But this guy was kind of a freak. He was the kind of guy that would like at our supper club, he would like brag about removing all the doorknobs and polishing them and putting them back. And I'm like, in my entire life, I will never have enough free time to think, hey, that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
That would be a good.
I've really been neglectful lately. I just haven't polished my doorknobs.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, I don't know that I'd be too proud that I could polish a knob.
I was going to say, was that a euphemism?
We knew where that was going.
At the supper club, was he actually just dropping euphemisms? You don't even pick up on it?
No, he
was actually polishing.
He was that kind of a guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway.
Hey, JB, you got any good news?
I have news, but I'm afraid none of it will compare.
It won't hold up to that. I'm curious. We'll have to talk about this offline but Conway has been on like 2020 and Dateline probably no less than 4 times since I've lived here for just crazy kind of stuff like that.
I'll look it up. I'll let you know. All right, Let's let JB do the news.
All right. Well, just a couple of things to talk about. Obviously, a big vote, I think, is happening in the next little bit. Maybe it's happening now, and I just don't have the news on in my studio. But the government has been shut down for a record amount of time. So I think we're all hopeful that maybe we'll get back to normal. Folks who are doing the work will get paid and that we can move on from this debacle. I kind of made light of it the first day it happened, not intending or thinking that it would last this long, but here we are nonetheless. So I'm hopeful that tonight, the evening of November 12th, that we will have a conclusion to this little escapade. A couple of really, we'll just start with the sad stuff and then we'll get to the really weird stuff, because you know how I like to just keep it very not positive, I guess. A couple of statistics came out this week that I am now continuing to find rather disheartening. First is the dental workforce is getting younger. I think none of us are super surprised. A lot of folks left in early retirement around COVID. It did kind of create this big sucking sound for our more experienced dentists in the marketplace. Now, a large number of dentists over the age of 60 have left, and that's been going on since about 2017 with a pretty big jump around 2020. More than half of dental assistants are currently applying for new jobs or planning to do so in 2026. So if you don't know where your dental assistant's head's at right now, maybe we have a little conversation about that. And about 12% of dental hygienists are also doing the same. They're either currently applying for new jobs or planning to do so in 2026. This just continues to show the volatility in the dental workforce and how a lot of movement is happening within different practices as folks are changing jobs for commute, work-life balance, and pay. A very strange story comes out of Australia. Now, I have to say, there are some kind of funky rules in Australia that was sort of really highlighted in COVID. They stayed locked down way longer than most other countries and still have kind of some weird rules around visiting their country if you think you've ever been sick or weren't vaccinated. But anyway, a periodontist in Australia had to call the police on a dental patient when she told him she didn't feel comfortable with him using an AI note-taking program during her visit. Now, this happened on November 9th, or it was published at least in the Daily Mail on November 9th. So the periodontist sat down, was doing an exam with a patient who came to him for a toothache. He indicated to her at that time that he wanted to use an AI note-taking apparatus, which I think we all know some of the ones that are on the marketplace today. She declined, saying she wasn't comfortable with that. He was a little bit disgruntled, but went on, did a quick exam, made a determination, wanted to refer her somewhere else, and then brought up the AI note-taking thing again. And at some point, this escalated into an ordeal in which the police ended up being called. It actually seems to have de-escalated as fast as it escalated. The police got there and found it all very comical. I don't know what really happened in the operatory. If the AI note-taking software had actually been turned on, we might have a little bit more detail, which is the irony of the story. But the overarching theme is, as these AI technologies start to come into play in the operatory, and we are using them for improving our note-taking capability and documenting more accurately what is happening in the operatory, are we going to have more confrontations with patients about whether or not they will consent to allow the AI note-taking device to collect the information that is being gathered in the room? And with that, that's the news.
Charlie and Diane Parker.
Charlie and Diane Parker. I have to ask Jenny. I don't remember that one.
Yeah. So there you go. All right.
Was that
Are you
image
giving
just
us
up
a
on the
taste of
screen
some
for you?
Northern Lights?
Did
Yeah,
that
who was
go up
that?
on the
Who sent that? Who sent that photo?
Ed Piotrowski, our local weather guy from his house in Myrtle Beach, just sent that.
Well, hot dog. Hot dog.
Yeah, Myrtle Beach, Northern Lights. How about that?
That's
Is
fantastic.
that really happening in
Yeah, that picture was from our local weather guy who was at his house and snapped a picture and just
who
put it out.
clearly has a better view than you do from your house?
Yes.
Yeah,
Unquestionable.
without a doubt.
Yeah. So
All right.
let's get into this, guys.
Yeah.
Great news segment. But let's get into some overhead talk. So what for you, JB, has been your biggest struggle as far as controlling overhead? You're probably, of the three of us, the most mindful of cost management.
Although Chad has really been stepping up his KPI game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
but KPIs are great, but the other side of that is, really doing something about it.
Sure.
So what
So
would
if
you
you'll indulge me for just a second,
Yeah.
I will at least give you some current benchmarks for the listeners to sort of say, okay, if I go back on Monday and I'm reviewing the podcast and I'm thinking, okay, what numbers do I need to be paying attention to? So general overhead, 65% is a healthy bottom line. I think most practices in the GP space are running a little closer to 75%, if we're all really honest. And that's not including your own compensation or your whatever personal expenses. You don't have to disclose that to me. I'm not the IRS, but whatever personal expenses you may be running through the practice that in reality might not be, you could move them off the balance sheet and your practice would still survive. Okay. So 65% would be super healthy. 75% is probably where most of us are living. And then if we want to look at overhead specifically, 25 to 28% is roughly staff costs. And most practices are probably living within that world. Lots of practices are getting closer to 30%, which is where dentists are really starting to get squeezed.
JB, let me stop you there for
Yeah.
a second, because this is a question that comes up very often with regard to payroll expense, because I think most people have heard anywhere from 20% being very healthy up to maybe 25%. What about payroll taxes and things like that?
All
Is that
included. Yeah.
included in that? And I think that's where people go wrong. They say, okay, here's my salaries, and they feel like they're in the right place. But then you start tacking on staff benefits and
Yeah. And generally speaking, that's about 30% of their salary is additional on top of their hourly rate, which would include taxes. You could even go as far as to say workers' compensation insurance and other insurances that you have to have in place to protect your employees also falls in that space. If you're offering 401k, if you're offering medical, if you're providing free dental care to your staff, that all lives in that space. And then honestly, lunches, team development, outside of CE, anything that you're doing that sort of is staff focused and staff specific so that they feel valued and want to keep coming back to work for you really does ultimately fall within that cost. Now, from a very rigid cost perspective, that is just staff cost and benefit. So that is just payroll and the benefits that you provide, including payroll taxes that you pay on their behalf. But if you really want to get in the weeds of what your staff is actually costing you, it is all of those things on top of the appreciation weeks, the extra team building events, the extra days off that you pay for with the PTO. It's all of that stuff that gets included as well.
So I'm just going to say that, just real briefly, and we don't have any agreement with any payroll service, but that's a real nice benefit of having the payroll service. I mean, is that everything is broken down into exactly what you spent in each category. I mean, yeah, you could probably do it through QuickBooks or whatever, but just the breakdown and the analysis and the benefit offerings, insurances, and all that stuff that are offered through the payroll service. But like, I love what you said, what you asked, Jeff, and then what you stated is that, all of that to me, that's all their fringe benefits, minus the meals and whatnot. But
Sure.
that is my employee cost are what we pay to the payroll service annually.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
it may be 31, 32%. I haven't looked at it so far this year, but last I had checked, it was about 28, 29.
Yeah, I think most of us, if we're really honest and look at it, we're probably close to 30. And that,
Yeah.
like, there are some areas like Jeff, I know a few dentists in more rural areas in South Carolina where their costs are a lot like their current hourly rates are a lot more comparable to where we were before COVID, where ours have really skyrocketed in North Carolina. So I think there's still some areas that probably still are living within that 25 to 28%. But I think at least as a benchmark, if you were to say, if you did the analysis, Chad, through your payroll company and you're living closer to 30 or 31%, as the business owner, know that that has to come from somewhere. And I would say the majority of that is probably coming from the owner doc's pocket, because the other things aren't really moving either. So when staff, are coming to you for raises and other things, like these are the things that we have to know really well in order to be prepared to say whether or not you can or cannot afford to continue to give them the financial increases that they're looking for and what justification you have to provide those increases for them. And unfortunately, there is a cap that you simply you have to have that non-negotiable to say, for our practice, our staffing costs cannot exceed 30%. Otherwise, it's not worth me showing up every day and owning this stupid business if I'm losing money when I come here. Like that is the decision of a business owner to say, is it worth putting your feet on the ground and going to your office every day if your salary is constantly going down and you're not making enough to pay your own bills and do all that kind of stuff? So,
but that's not to say, JB, that we can't keep providing salary increases
no,
for our team. And that's not to say that, we may not be able to bring someone else on if we're already at that percentage, because we always, for everything, we have to look at the denominator in that equation. We are looking at everything as a function of what we are collecting. So if that team member is able to up their game by providing a different service, by bringing in additional collections, that's the biggest piece that I think most dentists, don't necessarily understand. This is not a hard cap number, that number of collections can also go up. That can be driven by new procedures, by education, by bringing a well-trained team member on that can take things away from the dentist to free him up to do even higher collections, and higher production generation. So
totally agree with
and
you.
adjust your fees accordingly as well.
Yeah.
Totally agree with you. The thing I would say is, Jeff, that then, the growth model of metrics is different than this, like the stable practice that's maintaining, 3 or 4% growth a year. The thing I would challenge is that when we bring on those new people, and a lot of times you have to build it, right? It's the, what is it? The field of dreams, build it and they will come, right? You do have to do that as you're building a business. And we certainly have hired people in anticipation of the growth and anticipation of adding new opportunities and growing. But then we have to be watching those metrics to make sure we believed to be true does come to
100%.
fruition, right?
Yeah.
Because then otherwise you just have an overpaid person who didn't actually impact your bottom line. And now all it really has impacted was your ability to reinvest in your business and buy new equipment and enhance, to fix and repair the things that need to be fixed and repaired, and to pay yourself a modest salary to be able to continue to do what you're doing. So all in on the growth metrics. And you have to look at that a little bit differently to say, okay, we're going to push that to 32, 34%, knowing that in 2026, we're putting a new operatory online. We're filling another column of hygiene. If that's 250 grand for next year, that metric should be fine. And we should work it out at the end. If we don't hit that, then we have an employee we cannot afford anymore. And so we just have to be monitoring those numbers.
Or alternatively, we either create the salary increase or the new hire with an incentive-based metric. So in other words, their compensation is actually based on production or collections.
Sure.
So there's always, with that, in that scenario, at least you would have the growth alongside with the increase in overhead.
Absolutely.
We had a hygienist. We offered all three of our hygienists to go on commission-based production and or salary, and they, two of them dug their heels in, and one of them was like, "I'm in," And it's kind of funny how it all worked out, because in fairness, I did give a guaranteed minimum, but it was much lower than the hourly rate, and that's what they would get on vacations and holidays and whatnot, because, it had to be entered, and then everything else was paid as a bonus beyond that hourly rate. So they never made less than the hourly rate. So they'd log their hours and their production. And the beauty of it is they were in control of their own destiny, their own raises, and whatnot. Every time we did a fee increase, they got a raise. And that hygienist, and I can say it because the other two are no longer in our practice, but that hygienist was just out producing everybody, and it was all legitimate and trustworthy. But the thing is that when there was a downtime, they're picking up the phone and they're calling recall, and they're doing this and they're doing that, and so there was always an incentive. I almost wish they would still, agree to go back on it. So,
yeah,
that is the challenge of, at least in my area, they could leave tomorrow for more money. So there is currently little incentive to be commission based, because they don't need to be. They can go find another job that will guarantee them higher than what I'm currently paying them. The statistics I'm seeing right now, at least in my area, is that hygienists are being paid roughly 40% of their production. That's pretty substantial. Doctors are not being paid 40% of their production, and owner docs definitely are not being paid that. Associate docs are getting guaranteed somewhere between 30 and 33%. In some highly competitive areas, you might see up to 36%, but you're definitely not seeing doctors being compensated at 40% of their production, which means that hygienists are demanding a incredibly large salary for the production, the bottom line of what they're providing to the practice. And Amber Auger and some of these other hygienists have great education on getting those hygienists to perform and provide the value add of treatment planning, closure, queuing it up for the doctor so that those conversations are a lot easier. So there is a tremendous amount of opportunity. This is not a hygiene bashing session. It's just to say, if we're really looking at numbers, this is an area in the practice that's really getting a little bit lopsided if you don't have the right people on the bus who are engaged in the metrics of the practice and are engaged in the bottom line.
Yeah. I didn't mean to hijack. I know you were trying to kind of run down the different percentages of overhead, but I really think, payroll is probably an area that is the most impactful to the bottom line, because it's
your largest.
It is by far the
segment.
Largest line item on the P&L. So
short of mortgage payments, depending on how leveraged you are, your staffing cost is your highest, and there's very little fluctuation. That's a pretty steady number, because unless you constantly send people home when you're not busy, which we do not do, because at some point people depend on a certain amount of compensation per month to keep the job, then it's not a fixed cost, but it's certainly not highly variable. You can pretty much dial it in within, a certain percentage point, versus lab and supply costs and other things that are very variable depending on your production for the month prior. So you need to know what your staffing costs are, because you're carrying that. And I think all practice owners will tell you that there's been at least one night in their ownership life where they worried whether they were going to make payroll, because they knew that people were depending on them for that check. And, a combination of things, or an emergency situation happened, or whatever it might happen to be. I think just about everybody has had at least a sleepless night, or was concerned and making sure that they had all their ducks in a row, that payroll would be met, because that is our true obligation to our people. Otherwise, if we fail on that, our business doesn't have a lot to stand on, So anyway, and then for supply and overhead, or supply and lab costs, typically 10% between both of them. Generally speaking, they're each about 5 to 6%. So if you're doing more of your own in-office milling and stuff, you might have your lab cost closer to like 4% or 3%. If you're not doing your own in-house milling, you might see your lab costs higher. So then you have to kind of finagle on the overhead side. And what I wanted to bring up in all of this is that, Chad brought up a good point about raising fees. And I do think you need to have that healthy responsibility of raising your fees annually, a certain percentage point, et cetera. But for most folks in the US currently, there is a pretty significant percentage that are in network, and the in network contracts are not going up at the same rate. And you can only negotiate every 2 to 3 years if you're lucky. In some contracts, like one recent company that I left, has never allowed a negotiation. In the 17 years that we were a participating provider, we never had a negotiation. So that means we were still being compensated. I think we had a 1% increase from them back around COVID time, but that means we were still operating on contract negotiations that happened back in 2010. Jeez. So my point is that increasing your fees for a large majority of folks that are in network, which I think is about 80% of doctors today, doesn't do much. It helps, but it doesn't move the needle enough to compensate for where all the other expenses are coming from. So what I wanted to highlight was that if you're not a member of a group purchasing organization, if you're not leveraging some type of buying power, you're missing out on what all of the DSOs are taking advantage of. And the DSO structure currently, they can buy a cotton roll at 40% what the average private practitioner is paying. And it's enough to piss you off, like royally piss you off. Because at the end of the day, you realize that the deck is severely stacked against the independent practitioner, because if the independent practitioner is having to pay 60% higher than what his competitor is paying, then the business model ultimately doesn't make sense. So how does independent practitioners then leverage their buying power together to lower their overall costs? And groups like AIDA are trying to position this in such a way that you can get those same prices that DSOs are leveraging. And there's a couple other groups out there. Like I'm a member also of the COIS purchasing group, because I'm a member of COIS, and I can get a couple very specific products that I use through COIS for 25 or 40% less expensive. So it's finding these little niche groups that you can participate in or be a member of, because if you're not doing that and you're just paying Patterson or Henry Schein or any of the Benko their flat full fare, you're getting screwed. And that's not, I mean, I've been a loyal customer of Patterson for a very long time. That's not because I hate Patterson. It's just so unfair to the private practitioner. And I'm here to air that grievance today.
Yeah. Well, for most dentists who have had that kind of a relationship and have felt like they've gotten a good discount, there just is no way to ever leverage your relationship as an independent provider to the point where a group that has thousands of offices or
Right.
hundreds of offices is going to be able to do. This is what they call special markets amongst all of the distributorships. And so what they did with AIDA, which I think was just brilliant, is they said, how do we get DSO pricing to our customers without making them sell a part of their practice away, which the traditional DSO model for an independent practitioner is selling all or a percentage of their interest in their own company for that right to be able to, participate in the group purchasing plan. And so what the four partners that make up AIDA, the four distributors that are partnered with AIDA, I should say, which is Midwest Dental, Atlanta Dental, Getsy Dental, and Nashville Dental, what they did is they said, how do we take all of our power together and all of our customers together to form a group that can then negotiate pricing with some of the manufacturers better. And in order to do that, there had to be some kind of a group. And they made a brilliant decision to say, hey, we just form a group of our customers. They pay a couple of $100 per year, all inclusive. They don't have to sell us any part of their practice. They don't have to, give up ownership within their practice. And by doing that, now they can work in this group called AIDA, which has the ability to negotiate pricing with the manufacturers and then bring that kind of special pricing in. And I mean, you're talking pennies on the dollar of savings when you look at it as just a couple of $100 a year for the vast savings that you get across many categories, not just on your bonding agent, but across laboratory expenses and other services as well.
Yeah, and for those of you listening that don't know what AIDA is the American Independent Dental Alliance. Basically, if you look at the United States, you go over to New Mexico, up all the way north, across Oklahoma, through Tennessee, all the way across to North Carolina and down, and it expands even beyond that. All of those states are covered by one of the four distributors that we spoke about. And one of the great, or that Jeff spoke about, but one of the great things that I like is that these are smaller than the distributors that you often think of, but they're large enough to handle all of your needs. And they technically, if you look at it, if you look up AIDA Group Dental or AIDA Dental Group, just Google it, it's going to come up and it's going to say it's a DSO, but that's not meant that they have a governing, authority over your practice. It's classified as a DSO because if they classified themselves as a DSO, then they got the deeper discounts and they got the better pricing for all of us. So, it's a group that was formed for a number of reasons, purchasing power being just one of them, but also educational for us. And it was a great partnership for the four companies. So I highly encourage you to look into it. And I know that towards the end of the show, we're going to share that we now have a landing page for at least one of the partners of AIDA, which is Midwest Dental, which is in my area, in the Texas area and surrounding states. But we have a great landing page with some great pricing for those of you that fall within that area. So.
Well, and I think the purpose of the conversation tonight is to say we can either increase production, which I'm really careful to talk about that because I never want to encourage dentists to work tremendously more hard than they already are. Like, I'm not interested in trying to find a way for dentists to do 15 composites a day and go to doing 30 composites a day. I mean, I don't think that solves the problem. And it certainly makes your career a little bit shorter if you were doing that sustained for a long period of time. So it's a magic combination of doing procedures that are beneficial for your patient population, profitable for you, and optimize your delegated duties within your people, that you're leveraging all of their skill sets to their highest level of ability so you can be doing the most out of those people. And then on the flip side of that, really watching your costs to make sure that you're leveraging those relationships to keep your operating costs as low as humanly possible so that at least there's a little bit of money to squeeze out. And I'm not saying this because dentists are getting fat. In fact, a lot of statistics are coming out that dentists are really starting to see a pretty tremendous salary crunch. I just saw another post today of a young dentist starting a practice that's going in the tank, and they're trying to figure out how to save it before it goes under all the way. You didn't read about that 20 years ago. You didn't read about startup dental groups, young practitioners going out there and hanging their little shingle and saying, I do dentistry, you should come to me, and not succeeding. I think the failure rate when we opened our practice and took out a loan was less than 3%. Less than 3% of dentists and dental practices failed versus, I don't know, 40% of restaurants and retail locations and other things. Like the volatility of those markets is very different. But we're starting to see this shift in the fact that if the income is continuing to be controlled by insurance companies and that pendulum is not moving at the same pace at which the expenses are going up, we as dentists are unfortunately very much required now to be involved in the management of our practice and to be involved in the financial health of our practice so that we can participate in how to improve it. And we're not prepared. We're not taught. We don't get that in school. So hopefully we can consume really good continuing education to get us there.
Love it.
You guys have like one or two things that you have done in your practice so you're like, that was a win and it really helped my bottom line, like a consolidation of services or the way you run your systems? Or
over the past few years, I love you asking this question, but over the past few years, I don't think many dentists realize how easy technology has made it for us to consolidate our practices. I mean, over the past few years, I mean, my internet at the office is $75.
Yeah.
That's fantastic for the speed that we get. But the internet also now runs our phones. So we got rid of our phone bill. We pay a minimal fee for our phones, and then you get a practice management software. That fee lumps in with that.
Yeah.
You just start consolidating, looking at some of the things that you do. I'm sure you all remember Lighthouse, how much of a trendsetter they were in dentistry when they came out. And then all of a sudden, unfortunately, I mean, I love Lighthouse, but unfortunately, their services were gobbled up by Weave or someone of the likes, and you start looking at what you're doing on a monthly basis, and there are so many ways to consolidate. And with that being said, if you can't figure it out, there's a lot of great consultants out there that will help you figure out what you can consolidate within your practice.
Yeah, I love that. The other thing I would add is I think controlling your collections, again, I always think about the denominator in all of these equations, which is, how much money are you bringing in at the end of the day? Because the more it is, the lower the percentage, the less it is, the higher the percentage. And so again, agreeing with what you said, we're not trying to get anybody to work harder, but we're trying to get them to work smarter. So having the right person at the front office that is collecting what should absolutely be collected on the day that it should be collected, not waiting an exorbitant amount of time to get those monies in, because every day you wait to get that dollar in, it is worth less than it was the day that you build it out. So having that person that you can trust, and secondarily is having having a way that you are absolutely going behind to oversee that person. So having that right person who you know is going to collect, but also letting them know, hey, someone is watching to make sure that I'm doing my job that well.
Yep.
Checks and balances are just so important. And one of the best things that I did in practice, and a lot of people will disagree with this, but is I did have my wife involved in the practice for a long time. And but we did it in such a way, she was not involved in like the day-to-day, we're making this policy, we're making that policy. She was not the office manager. She was the accounts payable and HR side of the practice. But she looked at the numbers for me every single day and kept a pulse on what was happening. And I just can't stress that enough. And it doesn't have to be your wife. It can be, your husband. It can be you, if you can carve out that piece of the day to make sure that that work is getting done. But even the best of the best in that position, there needs to be a check and balance, and there needs to be accountability for those metrics.
Yeah, I can't.
JB, did you feel that he was talking to you?
Mm-hmm.
He kept doing a lot of this.
Yeah, I stole money from him one time. I need to borrow $5 at a bar one time, and he'll never let me forget it. And Jenny sent me a bill. She sent me a bill. The balance sheet didn't balance.
His arms flap when he gets
it didn't balance. No, I think your point is super valid. Like Ange and I were that for each other because we were a partnership. So she handled some things, I handled other, but we had implicit trust of one another. I think the problem is finding that person in your life that you have implicit trust in. And I will say it's probably very rarely somebody you employ. Like there's got to be like a deeper relationship beyond that. Not that partners don't screw each other, not that spouses don't screw each other. Like I'm not oblivious to the number of dentists that have gone home and married,
have stolen from.
Right. And absolutely. And the number of dentists that have married their hygienists. Like I'm not oblivious to any of the statistics. I'm just saying it's important to have a neutral person in your corner that only cares about your success. And in Jeff's situation, that was his wife, and she's still 100% locked in on that today. For me, it was my business partner, still locked in 100% on that today. So just be mindful, and if you have a second doubt about it, maybe you should get a third or a fourth influential person there to make sure that the books are being balanced. I wanted to say mine. So you guys both brought up really great things. I think the other big key is having your inventory really visible. So I think the death of dental practices from an overhead perspective is a ton of cabinetry and drawers. Have you ever just walked into your sterilization or your operatories and just started opening up stuff? And you find, number one, you always find a shit ton of broken things that you're like, hey, why are there 7 hand pieces in here? Well, they don't work. What's the long plan? What are we doing with them? Well, nothing. You told me not to fix them. Then why are they still here in this space? Why are they taking up space? Well, I didn't want to throw them away. Well, you have to throw them away or recycle them or whatever, but they have to go now. So I would encourage every dentist, if you've not done this recently, just walk in, especially if you have a ton of cabinetry, and just start opening up stuff. You're going to find, number one, you're going to get pissed off. Just go ahead and prepare you for that. Because every time I do it, I get angry. You're going to find a lot of things that you've bought now 3 or 4 times because no one could find them. And there it was lying dead in a drawer or buried behind a cabinet. So
how about 17 air water tips in the U drain underneath the sink in my sterilization area? 17.
Yep.
Didn't even know that you could fit that many in the pipe.
How many times have I had a Garrison ring go in the trash until I started telling folks that their pay was going to be deducted? And now, amazingly, I have not in probably 4 years bought a Garrison ring because of loss. I replace them as they wear out, but I don't replace them because we just can't find them anymore. So what I wanted to say in that is, number one, there are some keys here. Number one, I keep all of my inventory, reusable consumables, in open, clear bins or tip out containers. So we can see, and my lead assistant that manages all of that at both of our locations can see exactly what we have on hand at any given time. We also only have a roller cart in every operatory. The hoarders, there's always a squirrel or two on your team that wants to have everything in their operatory so that they never don't have what you need. But the reality is you don't need all of those things in your operatory all the time. Sometimes you're just going to have to get up and go get something. So we have pretty well-defined expectations of what the inventory needs to look like in each operatory so that if my lead assistant is going around and saying, I think I need cement, they're not having to open every single operatory and every single drawer to find out just how much cement I'm sitting on at any given time. We have 2 containers of cement that go between the 4 operatories, and they're just moved from room to room. My statement in that is that you need to have your inventory very transparent. It should be very easy to see how much you have at any given time, and that it's very easy for that person to order, and that you're not paying them to sit there for hours on end to open up a countless number of drawers, ultimately to give up and just keep buying and buying and buying because they don't want to run the risk that Chad will blow his top one day when he goes to cement a crown and you don't have any cement, right? So they're just going to make sure that they always have it on hand and you never get upset. But in reality, you're sitting on $1,500, $2,000 worth of syringes of cement within your clinic that you will either expire or you won't find before you actually go to cement a crown. So making your inventory very transparent and visible and having your team super accountable. Things are labeled. Every operatory is accountable for the things that are held within their operatory. So when things go missing, we know whose fault it is. And we don't shame folks, but there is some level of response. I mean, if you worked for a construction company and you went and lost the truck, they would be upset that you lost the truck or the jackhammer that was in the back that was supposed to break up the cement. Like, they do have to be accountable for some amount of the inventory in which they're responsible for. So just go open those drawers, people. I'm telling you, you're going to get angry. I have really dialed in systems and I still find drawers and I still open them up and I still get really mad.
Yeah, there's no question that
it's
that
just
happens.
Money sitting in your
It is.
operatories, just burning.
And what's worse is when you pick it up and it's expired.
It's expired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even worse. What's next, JB? We only have a couple of minutes, so let's get a couple more out there.
I think so. Those are the big ones on the overhead side. I think the other big piece of the management of cost is going back to driving revenue, which is what you talked about on the denominator side. And, obviously looking at fee increases, looking at your PPO contracts to see if there's opportunities to negotiate those contracts or to get out of them where it makes sense. And certainly I would encourage a healthy cull. We've done that pretty consistently for the last 15 years, and our business has never done worse the year after it left a network. And this past year, we left our biggest network, which was 30% of our patient population. And this particular payer that we left We knew that the insurance company would pay our patients directly. They would not allow us to do assignment of benefits. So that's a big decision, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wonder who that was.
There's only two that
Yeah.
fall in that category.
Hmm.
So we
Hey,
knew
let
it'd
me
be a
throw
big
something
one.
else out there, JB. I think on the revenue side, we have to consider productive scheduling. I think that's
For
probably
sure.
that is the second biggest after having that right person for me, other than having that right person, was getting to a point where we said this spot is being held for a productive procedure. This is what we plan, block scheduling. We don't have time to
Yeah.
get into that. But once we really move to a true block schedule where here's what I expect, we have this many spots for high production cases, and everyone knows those better get filled, and we have a backup list for what needs to be filled where, not walking into a situation where, well, I've got 78 composites on my schedule today. Now, that may happen from time to time.
It does.
And because you can have 6 or 7 composites, which is a high production case.
Right.
And if that's what you need to put in a space rather than keeping it open, then absolutely, that's fine. But for the most part, everyone should have the same expectation of what a good, productive, and effective schedule should look like.
And I would also piggyback on that to say, thinking about doctor-driven time versus delegated-driven time, right?
Absolutely.
So I can do a crown or whatever, which is very productive for us. But adjacent to that, I can be doing an Invisalign delivery because it's 90 to 97% delegated to my team because they're capable of putting attachments on. They're capable of reviewing instructions. They're capable of trying in trays. They're capable of doing almost that entire procedure except IPR if it needs it. And so, that can be piggybacked to another productive procedure. So also leveraging doctor-driven production versus assistant-driven production. And when your team really understands and you schedule your appointments based on doctor time, then you can really optimize your team and your delegated procedures accordingly so that you can be really productive in 2 columns, even though you might not be working 2 columns. You may be supervising a column. And you may be you can be doing 1,700 composites, but I can be doing a delivery and, a bunch of other things in my delegated column that are very productive and beneficial to the practice, but I don't have to be in there.
It's key.
It's just so much though, honestly, if you think about it, when all we really wanted to be was physicians of the oral cavity, but we have to be, these.
Well, I think there are some opportunities where somebody can come in and absolutely help us, and that's what groups like AIDA are there for. Not only can they reduce your materials costs, they can negotiate your labs. They have resources for negotiating insurance reimbursement. There's so many services that they can offer, and at a rate that competes with all of the larger DSOs. And you know why? Because if you look at the number of offices between all 4 of those dental distributorships, the 4 that I mentioned, they truly are the largest DSO in the country, and they have some of the best negotiating power. If you think of the biggest one you can think of, like a Heartland or an Aspen or something like that, guess what? AIDA is bigger than that when you include all the offices that are members, because it's such a reasonable buy-in at a couple of $100s. And again, this is not to be a commercial for AIDA. This is a testimony for me because I joined AIDA. And Chad, I know you joined AIDA as well because you were a Midwest customer. I was an Atlanta dental customer, and I was able to just get incredible new savings because of that group purchasing power, and I got good prices before, but not what I'm able to get through AIDA. And that's really helped me tremendously.
What happened to you recently, Chad? You said something that happened to you, I think on the bonding agent side or something, right?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I looked at when we were in the process of approval of this landing page for our discounts, I looked at the bonding agent that I'm using currently, because that is the one example that's on the page. And I was like, holy crap, I'm paying that for that bonding agent. And then they've got 4 other choices that I know are good because I've used some in the past. I'm weird about bonding agents, but I've used some in the past. I'm like, well, crap, I haven't used this one before. I want to try it because it was about 60% cheaper per unit than what I'm paying. And that's because the product that I'm using is not, I mean, it's an expensive product to begin with, more expensive product to begin with, but it's also not part of the purchasing program. So, by switching to one that's in the purchasing program that I know is fantastic based upon the literature, I just want to see how it works in my hands. It may save me 60% on bonding agent. And you think about what that could do for your overhead. That's a product that we use day in, day out, all day long. I mean, how many pops do I go through in a day?
And bonding agent is like thousands of dollars per gallon.
Yeah. Yep.
When they put in the dapping dish, they just squeeze all of it out, like push it all out.
Well, the particular product that I am ordering, hint, hint, has a fail safe to where you cannot dispense it all out of the bottle.
When we have new hires come in, that is one of the first things my lead assistant will tell me is like, that's going to be a bit too much for Belle. She's going to see that and she's going to freak out. Like, there should be a drop, one singular drop.
Yep. I mean, it goes to waste. So,
or evaporates in a thin air.
Yeah.
Anywho,
I don't need to be wetting my instrument with that.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it came back full circle to polishing your knob.
Another day, but that is not what you want to be wetting your instrument with.
No.
So there you go. All right.
Or polishing your doorknobs.
Yes. No.
Now it's come full circle.
Nope. So anyhow, let's close out. How's that?
Who would want to close on that?
Take us down, Chad.
Hey, folks, I think the motto of tonight, if you go back, I'm going to make you listen to the show, but Jeff took the words right out of my mouth because I was going to say it. He beat me to it. We're not telling you to work harder. We're telling you to work smarter. So, that's the bottom line. Really look at your costs, look at what you're spending, break it down, analyze it, and see where maybe some cost savings could be. And quite frankly, if the cost savings aren't there, the next thing to do is check your fees. Check your fees. If you increase your hourly expenditures, you should increase your hourly income as well. And I mentioned briefly, we went into it a little bit earlier than I anticipated, so I didn't get to tell you all of the benefits, but I'm a huge believer in AIDA. I know we all are huge believers in AIDA, and that's, once again, AIDA, not ADA. But I mentioned education, I mentioned pricing, I mentioned power for the 4 companies to be able to offer those things to us, but a couple things that I did not mention. One of the biggest is engagement and community. There's a great community of docs. There's a great, I believe it's January 26th through 29th in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, or Los Cabos, Mexico, right next to it. There will be the Aspire 2026. Great sense of community, great education. All of the AIDA.
This is like the last 2 weeks to register.
Yeah, and we've been, several times. We're going again this year, looking super forward to it. All-inclusive resort. The cost for the resort and for the education is phenomenal. But the last thing that I really wanted to mention about AIDA is they also offer a lot of auxiliary services and discounted pricing to auxiliary services. not something that you would necessarily go to a dealer and buy, but when you're a member of AIDA, you have access to a lot of services at a discounted price. And I use a lot of the services that they partnered with, but they are
Like Pearl.
constantly building and adding offerings to the members. Yeah. So I would highly encourage you to at least look into it. And remember, it's a DSO like no other DSO. I mean, it is a DSO in name only. You still have complete and full autonomy of your practice.
You're not buying your practice.
No, not at all. Not at all. And in the end, you get a rebate check every year, which offsets the cost of the business. So
yeah.
If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any one of us. We'll try and put the links in the comments. And other than that, have a great night, folks.
Love it. Have a good night, everyone.
Night.
Night, everybody.